The sinister town erased from existence, a spine-chilling government cover-up exposed. Sarah glanced around the nearly empty diner, the fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps. The late-night customers slurred tales of a town lost to time, a place wiped clean from maps, swallowed by whispers of fear. The forgotten place, they called it. Flickering shadows of terror danced along the walls, filling her chest with a suffocating unease. As she scrubbed sticky tables, her heart raced. The air felt thick and heavy, a warning buried deep within the small town of Willow Creek. After clocking out, she found her 2 kids, Jake and Mia, shifting uncomfortably at her side. Their anxious faces reflected her own growing dread. They left their laughter in the rearview mirror, replaced by a chilling silence. Their own once cheerful neighborhood buzzed with a nervous energy tonight, the shadows around their home growing thicker, darker. Whenever she glanced outside, familiar faces turned from her like the dead. The boy next door, who used to be all smiles, shuffled by and averted his eyes. What was happening? In the comfort of her small home, anxiety crept like a spider in the night. The din of the diner faded as Sarah drove through the rain-slicked streets, the wipers working in frantic rhythm, barely keeping the pulse of fear at bay. That night, when her children cried out in their dreams, Sarah's heart sank. Furtive looks exchanged between neighbors, shadows flickering past windows. Something was tearing the fabric of normalcy. She peered through the living room curtains, the damp chill biting through the glass. Out on the street, a tall figure loomed in the flickering glow of the street lamp, watching. Terror seized her heart. She shot open the door, but the figure melted into the night. A cold sweat trickled down her back. A warning? Who or what was watching her family? The next day, Sarah sought refuge in her childhood friend Laura's company, but good friends aren't always enough. Laura's voice trembled as she revealed the truth. The forgotten place was no myth. A government experiment, Laura whispered, eyes wide, to erase folklore linked to dark forces. It's all real, Sarah. They're lurking, waiting. Breath hitching in panic, Sarah felt the walls closing in. The kooky stories from her childhood felt closer than ever. What if they weren't just stories? Fear clawed at her, turned her stomach. The shadows whispered of lost souls, and Jake's eyes darted nervously toward the window while Mia wrapped her arms around her stuffed bunny like it was an anchor in a storm. Just then, a distant thud resonated outside, jarring her from her thoughts. The windows rumbled, and the ground seemed to shake beneath her feet. A bone-chilling scream sliced through the night, piercing the eerie hush. The prowler, the figure that turned to smoke, had returned, creeping ever closer, insidious and relentless. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With terror pressing against her chest, Sarah made a desperate decision. They needed answers. She gathered Jake and Mia, their faces drawn with haunting fear, and left the safety of their home behind. They crept toward the outskirts of town, where the air felt thick with foreboding, a chilling misstep into darkness. Mom, what if we don't come back? Jake's voice wavered, a stark echo of her own doubts. Just keep close, she replied, fear twisting her stomach. But as they approached the foreboding boundary, a masked figure erupted from the fog ahead, moving swiftly, surrounded by an oppressive silence. Their eyes widened in horror, hearts pounding, as the weight of the truth loomed just out of reach. What awaited them was more terrifying than anything they'd ever tried to imagine. The shadows shifted as they prepared to confront fear itself. The looming question hung in the air: would they face the horrors, or would they become another lost tale in the shadows? A scream echoed through the night, shattering the silence. Sarah's heart dropped, a cold wave washing over her as fear gripped her insides. The figure loomed closer, its form twisting and contorting in the shadows, feeding off her dread. "Run!" she screamed, grabbing Jake's arm and pulling Mia to her side. They took off down the empty road, the chill of the air biting into their skin. "Where are we going?" Jake yelled, breaths coming in ragged gasps. "Somewhere safe," Sarah shouted back, adrenaline surging through her veins. They sprinted away from the growing darkness, but the oppressive weight of invisible eyes tracked them with every step. The fog curled around their legs, sticky and thick, making it hard to see beyond a few feet. Another piercing scream rang out, this one more visceral, more drawn out, a cry from a soul in torment. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. "Stay close," she urged, glancing back over her shoulder. The masked figure had vanished, but the unease clawed at her, tangling with the adrenaline. They reached the edge of the town, where the woods loomed like dark sentinels, roots and branches twisting as if to ensnare them. Shadows danced, flickering beneath the trees that swayed ominously. A strange rustling erupted behind them, echoing through the stillness. It felt alive, almost sentient, as if the darkness itself was reaching out. "Mom!" Mia's voice trembled, clutching tighter to her stuffed bunny. "I don't want to go in there." Sarah hesitated, glancing back toward the town. The streets were shrouded in mist, and a sense of finality filled the air. "We have to, Mia. We need to find out what is happening." As they stepped into the woods, dread settled over them like a heavy blanket. The trees loomed higher and higher, their branches intertwining to form a labyrinth. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine as the shadows danced around them, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The air thickened with an unmistakable sense of foreboding. A snap of a twig made them freeze. "Did you hear that?" Jake whispered, eyes wide, scanning the darkness. The rustling grew louder, and then a low growl rumbled from the depths of the forest. Before they could turn back, figures emerged from the shadows, their faces obscured, watchful. They moved with an unnatural grace, encircling Sarah and her children. Panic gripped her throat. "What do you want?" she called out, voice shaking. One of the figures stepped forward, revealing a head covered in a faded ski mask, eyes gleaming with an unsettling hunger. "You shouldn't be here," a raspy voice whispered. "You don't belong. You know too much." An icy grip clutched at Sarah's heart. There was something agonizingly wrong, a connection to the town's sinister history, a history that was supposed to be erased, yet here it was, breathing, alive. "We need to leave, now!" she shouted, jerking her children back. As they spun to escape, the shadows twisted around them, thickening, closing in like a noose. Desperate, they dashed deeper into the woods, but the whispers grew loud, clawing at their sanity. "Join us," they beckoned, hauntingly seductive as they tugged at the edges of their minds. With every passing moment, the stakes rose higher. She could feel it in her bones, a chilling truth that must surface. What had Willow Creek buried? As she raced into the unknown, another thought gnawed at her. Would they find answers, or would they become a part of the darkness that lay coiled beneath the town's surface? As the forest consumed them, another piercing scream echoed, joined now by others, echoes of the lost. It vibrated in her chest, a grisly symphony that warned them that time was running out. The trees loomed ominously ahead, their branches twisting, blocking the path. "Which way?" Jake cried, panic rising. But the decision was made for them. The thick fog shifted, revealing a shadowy path twisting upward where no one had ever ventured before. "What waits up there?" Sarah wondered as they stepped closer, dread seeping into her heart. Was it the truth they sought, or had they strayed too far into the malevolence that surrounded them? With the unknown stretching out before them, a chill filled the air, whispering, what if the darkness was exactly what they were meant to find? They stepped onto the shadowy path, each footfall heavy with uncertainty. Mia clutched her bunny tighter, her small body trembling against Sarah's side. The fog thickened around them, drawing them deeper into the abyss. "Mom, I'm scared," Mia whispered, voice barely audible, swallowed by the surrounding gloom. "Me too, sweetheart," Sarah replied, her heart racing. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back to escape into the light they had known. But the pull of the woods was irresistible, a magnetic force that tugged them along the narrow trail. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of fragmented voices. She caught Fraser's words laced with pain and longing. Help us find peace, remember. They seemed to weave through the trees, wrapping around their minds, tangling them in intricate patterns of fear and confusion. Don't listen to them, Jake shouted, trying to mask his own trembling with defiance. They're just tricks. This isn't real. But even he sounded unsure, the doubt creeping into his voice. As they advanced, the path sloped steeply, thrusting them onwards. A flicker of movement caught Sarah's eye to the left. She turned, catching just a glimpse of a figure darting behind a tree, an unmistakable silhouette of another masked person. Did you see that? She gasped, stopping in her tracks. See what? Jake replied, scanning the gloom, eyes wide with panic. There was someone here. Her breath quickened, pooling anxiety spilling over her resolve. But before Jake could respond, a slow, menacing chuckle erupted from the shadows. The sound echoed, wrapping itself around them like a serpent. You're not supposed to be here, the voice hissed, dripping with malice. You're already part of the story. Sarah's pulse raced, driven by terror. Run! She ordered again, pulling Jake and Mia forward with her. The path ahead began to twist and widen, the trees pressed closer, as if attempting to entrap them within their gnarled limbs. They sprinted, the fog swirling around them, the whispers shifting to shouts chilling and frantic, rising above the growls and laughter. You will know the truth. You must remember. Suddenly, the ground beneath them gave a sickening lurch. A dark opening yawned in the ground, as if the forest itself had split wide open to devour them. Stumbling back, Sarah caught a fleeting moment of clarity. Where did this path lead? Mom! Jake cried, sheer panic flooding his features. What do we do? Above them, the branches shifted like skeletal fingers, grasping at whatever remained of their hope. A faint light flickered far in the distance just beyond the crushing despair that threatened to drown them. That way over there! Sarah yelled, pointing at the glow. Her resolve ignited, she ran, her heart pounding like a drum, driving her forward. The whispers echoed in defiance, growing more frantic, a warning she struggled to shake off. They barreled toward the light, but the shadows lunged after them, pulling them back, trying to drag them into the darkness. The ground became treacherous, roots snagging at their feet. Sarah's thoughts raced. Was the light a sanctuary or a cruel trick? The moment they reached the source and stumbled into its embrace, they were met with a grotesque sight. The flickering light emanated from a circle of stones, each inscribed with symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. Lamenting faces writhed within the eerie glow, trapped within the very stones themselves. Welcome, the voices hissed, now in unison. Join us, or become like us. A shiver of icy dread ran down Sarah's spine as she looked at her children, who were frozen in fear. Mom, we can't stay here! Jake shouted, wrenching her from the horror. But another scream pierced the air, not just of horror, but of despair, a warning for all who dared approach. Would they remain to uncover the town's dark truth, or were they already too late? As Sarah looked back, the shadows loomed, waiting. Would they succumb to the darkness or find a way to escape the sinister web woven around them? In that moment, she knew whatever choice they made could change everything. What have we uncovered? She thought, breathing heavily as darkness crept back toward her. The moment she turned back, the oppressive shadows seemed to swell and pulse, their darkness alive with a hunger that made Sarah's skin crawl. Run! She shouted, her voice cracking with urgency. Jake grabbed Mia's hand, pulling her behind him as they stumbled away from the haunted stones. Panic surged in Sarah's chest, a burning ember of instinct driving her to flee, but the voices slithered through the fog, wrapping tighter around her senses. Stay with us forever, they sang, their tones harmonizing with a sinister sweetness that clawed at her mind. She forced herself to look away, focusing on the path ahead. Each step felt heavier, like the ground itself was trying to drag them back. Why wouldn't it end? Mia choked out, her little body quaking as tears streamed down her cheeks. Where's the exit? Just keep running! Jake yelled, though he was gasping for breath, his resolve starting to thin. Sarah fought against the weight of their shared dread, chastising herself for bringing them here, for letting curiosity lead them into a trap. As they rounded a bend, Sarah's heart dropped. The path forked into two directions, one veering sharply into the thicker woods, the other leading toward flickering lights. She hesitated, scanning each option, heart racing. The whispers seemed louder here, a dissonant chorus of pleading and malice urging her to choose. "Mom!" Jake's south voice screeched somewhere close, a warning she barely registered. A chill gripped her as she saw shadows convulsing around the trees, their shapes shifting, reaching, searching for something, someone. There was a sliver of light peeking through the trees ahead, but her gut twisted at the thought that the stones still lurked behind her. "We need to go left," Sarah said, pointing toward the darker path. The pull of the flickering lights felt like a trap too sweet to be true. "Are you sure?" Jake jested, skepticism edging his voice. "Trust me." She grabbed Mia's hand tighter, pulling both children along the darkened trail. Everything faded behind them, the screams, the chorus, the grasping shades. As they darted into the murkiness, Sarah felt the air shift, colder, thicker, an impending weight that grew heavier with every step. The trees loomed above them, their branches entwined, creating a mini hell above their heads. Her heart raced like a wild drum now. Suddenly, a sharp cry erupted from somewhere close, a monstrous shriek that echoed through the night. Sarah froze, terror rooted in her chest. "What was that?" she whispered, dread pooling at the base of her throat. "I don't know," Jake stammered, eyes wide with fear. Mia clutched her bunny close, almost as if it were a talisman against the horrors creeping around them. "It's okay, we just keep moving," Sarah breathed, but doubt wormed its way in. That shriek had been human or something that used to be. She pressed forward, stepping on a brittle branch that snapped beneath her foot, adding a crack to the tense silence. Then, a strange rustle emerged behind them. Not a whisper, but a shuffle, something crawling through the underbrush. They huddled closer together, peering into the darkness. Fear gripped her with icy fingers as more rustling joined the first, like an approaching parade of horrors, drawing nearer, hungry, eager. "Mom, please!" Jake's voice hardened with panic. "Let us go. Now! Run!" Sarah shouted, forcing her feet to move again. They raced, heartbeats pounding in syncopation with the frantic rustling behind them. The darkness thicket began to thin, light breaking through as they crashed into an open clearing. Stumbling, she caught a glimpse of a dilapidated cabin at its center, the light pulsing through dusty windows, beckoning them. "Shouldn't we go in there?" Mia murmured, her voice a mix of hope and fear. Sarah looked back, dread knitting her brow. But the rustling had escalated, transforming into a rumbling growl that vibrated through the air. We need to find a way to hold them off," she gasped, locking eyes with Jake, urging him to understand. "Mom!" he cried suddenly, pointing into the distance. "Look!" A shadow broke away from the edge of the forest, a figure darting toward them, its face covered, intent on reaching the cabin. Light spilled from the doorway, flickering like a heartbeat against the approaching darkness. "Run!" Sarah yelled, but it was different now. She had to protect her kids, the cabin might be the only hope. Get inside. What if they weren't alone in there? What if the figure was a part of this sinister play? "Come on!" she screamed, propelling them forward as the figure drew closer, the darkness behind shifting, eager to consume. In that moment, as they dashed toward the light, the question gnawed at her: would the cabin shelter them from what lurked in the shadows, or would it become another trap, another piece of the dark tale they've stumbled upon? As they reached the door and swung it open, the darkness behind them paused, waiting, containing a breathless terror that promised everything and nothing. The door creaked open with a groan, echoing through the stale air inside the cabin. It wasn't the sanctuary they had hoped for. The light flickered ominously, casting long, twisted shadows that danced mockingly on the walls. "Inside. Now!" Sarah urged, her voice taut with urgency as she shoved Jake and Mia ahead of her. They stumbled in, their breaths quickening alongside their racing hearts, the last tendrils of panic still gripping them like a vice. "Where do we go?" Jake panted, eyes darting around the dim interior. The cabin was small, cluttered with old furniture draped in dusty sheets. It felt forgotten, like time had been intentionally siphoned out. Maybe we can hide, Mia quivered, her voice trembling. No! We need to find something we can use, Sarah snapped, her eyes scanning for any sign of defense. She caught herself staring at the shadows prancing across the walls. Were they almost mocking her? The cabin was quiet now, but it felt like a false calm. The heavy, oppressive silence was suffocating, thick like fog, wrapping around Sarah, Jake, and Mia. She felt an urge to scream, to shatter the eerie stillness, but she fought it back. Stay close, she whispered, and they shifted together, hearts pounding in unison. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed from outside. The figure was approaching, the growl rising from deep within the forest. They're here, Jake whispered, his eyes wide as saucers. The cabin felt less like safety and more like a trap. Look! Mia pointed to a fireplace at the far end of the room, blackened and cold but with a smattering of logs still lying inside. We could start a fire, Sarah said, desperation leaking into her voice. The light from the logs, however dim, was still better than the approaching darkness outside. Moving to the fireplace, she fumbled through the odds and ends stacked around, searching for anything that could help. As she gathered dry twigs, a feeling overtook her, a creeping sensation that they were being watched. She glanced back, and for a moment she thought she saw the figure outside, a shadow so dark it absorbed the flickering light. Panic swelled within her as it melted back into the blackness. Mom? I don't like this place, Mia shivered, pulling at her mother's arm. I know, sweetheart. Just hold on, Sarah replied, forcing her hands to steady as she struck the match against the rough surface. The flames sparked to life, an ember against the cold fear enveloping them. As the flame caught the twigs, warmth spread into the room, but the shadows stretched farther as the fire sent them into retreat, only to whisper behind the walls now. Do you hear that? Jake asked, voice barely above a whisper. Sarah strained her ears to listen, recognizing the faint calls creeping in through the cracks, the same haunting voices from before, now twisted beyond comprehension. She dropped her focus, the sparks dancing too much like the shadows outside. With the fire sputtering, she turned to face her kids. If we stay quiet, they might. A loud crash shattered her words. The door flew open, slamming against the wall with a force that sent the children stumbling backward. The dark figure stood silhouetted against the doorway, hovering just outside the pallor of the firelight. Its face was still hidden, but something about the voice could be felt as much as heard, a horrifying combination of sorrow and menace. Let us in, it begged, but the eerie overtones of that plea made goosebumps erupt on every inch of Sarah's skin. Run! She shouted again, but terror seized her legs, rooted her to the spot. Mia was already at the kitchen door, pulling it towards the back. Mom, this way! Jake, wide-eyed, snapped out of the horror, rushing to grab his sister's hand. No! Stay here! Sarah cried out, but the darkness danced in. The figure stepped forward, almost addressing her. You can't escape your fate, we all return. Panic surged, and they fled through the back door, the gnawing horror driving them forward. They plunged into the starlit night, the forest waiting just beyond. As they sprinted, the haunting chant rose again, a hymn of sorrow that promised calamity. A flash of light glimmered from deeper in the woods, a beacon flickering mysteriously ahead. But as they ran, urgency clawed at them. Could it lead them somewhere else, somewhere unfathomably sinister? In that moment, before they disappeared into the thicket, a tremor of dread pulsed through Sarah's mind. What if the whispers weren't just the product of the night? What if the promise of returning was more than metaphorical? As they dashed toward the light, the shadows melted behind, yet new ones lurked in their path, waiting silently in the dark. What truth awaited them at the heart of the woods? Branches snagged at their clothes as they burst into the dense underbrush, the cool night air biting at their skin. Heartbeats raced like a war drum in Sarah's chest, drowning out the rustles of the forest around them. Focusing on the flickering beam ahead, she could barely keep her breath steady. Mia, hold my hand! Sarah gasped, intertwining her fingers with her daughter's. She could feel the shivers vibrating through Mia's small frame. Jake grabbed back Sarah's other hand, stumbling slightly as they maneuvered through the trees that loomed like sentinels, unwelcoming and foreboding. What if it's a trap? Jake voiced, his eyes darting between the shadows that seemed to shift and sway. I don't know. Just stay close. Sarah barked, urgency tinged with fear spilling over into her voice. She could feel their eyes on her, could almost sense the figure from the cabin lurking just out of sight, trailing them like a dark cloud. As they pushed through the underbrush, a flash of light blinked back at them, guiding them forward. It pulsed rhythmically, almost alive. There. Do you see it? Mia pointed towards the glow, and for a moment, hope flickered within Sarah's chest. Let us go, Sarah urged, her voice a mix of excitement and dread. They stumbled into a clearing, where the light exploded into life, a fire pit, surrounded by ancient stones. However, it didn't feel like salvation. Black smoke curled upwards, mingling with the unease that smothered them. The air felt thicker, like the dark shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. Mom, look! Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Just beyond the fire, strange symbols were carved into the surrounding stones, intricate and foreboding. A chill slithered down Sarah's spine, a palpable sensation of wrongness. Those look ancient, Jake said, his fingers tracing the air around the carvings without touching them. Stay back, Sarah warned, taking a cautious step forward, only to feel something grab at her ankle. A vine? No, it was an arm, but it was too dark to see anything clearly. She gasped, jerking her foot away, her heart racing. Don't let it! Jake shouted, but it was too late. A force erupted from the shadows, a cold wave washing over them, shifting the ground beneath their feet. Figures started to rise around them, ghostly forms materializing from the dark roots that threaded through the ground. Hollow eyes watching, faces twisted in perpetual torment. You cannot escape, they chanted in unison, their voices a haunting echo of the whispers Sarah had heard before. Run! Back into the trees! Sarah screamed, but the dread locked her in place, terror chaining her to the ground. Mia tugged at her arm, eyes wide with fear. Mom, please! Sarah shook her head violently, dispelling the nightmare fog that threatened to pull her under. She forced herself to move, pulling her children back toward the trees. Behind them, the whispers grew louder. You cannot escape your fate, we all return. They sprinted into the darkness, but the forest felt alive, twisting paths that shifted as they ran. Desperation clawed at their lungs. With every step, the weight of unseen eyes bearing down suffocated them. Look! There's a house! Mia shouted, her finger trembling toward a silhouette, faintly illuminated by another flickering light in the distance. With hope igniting her spirit, Sarah led them toward the structure, praying it was a refuge instead of another trap. As they approached, they could make out the details: a cottage smeared in time, surrounded by trembling trees that seemed to murmur as the wind passed through them. Please, let this be safe, Jake breathed as they stepped onto the creaking porch. But as soon as they set foot inside, an overwhelming sense of dread settled over their shoulders. The door slammed closed behind them, sealing them inside the dim interior, and the chanting fell silent. The cold light above flickered ominously, and Sarah's heart sank. The shadows behind the wooden walls began to shift, melding and pooling, whispering secrets she feared to confront. The chilling realization gripped her: they may have entered a place where the lines between reality and nightmare blurred. With dread settling deep within, Sarah turned to face her children, ready to protect them no matter the cost. But as she opened her mouth to speak, a shadow swept across the floor, creeping closer. What grotesque truth awaited them inside this haunted haven? The air felt like ice in their lungs as they stood inside the cottage, shadows swirling like restless spirits. Sarah's heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the unsettling quiet. She glanced around, the dim light casting ominous shapes that seemed to shift and pulse each time she blinked. Mia, stay close, she whispered, gripping her daughter's hand tighter, while Jake stood protectively at her side, eyes flitting nervously around the room. A dusty table sat at the center of the room, cluttered with yellowed papers and peculiar trinkets. Some artifacts shimmered strangely, catching the light in unsettling ways. What are all these? Jake wondered aloud, stepping cautiously toward the table. Don't touch anything, Sarah snapped, aware of the growing anxiety swelling in her chest. She could sense that each object had a dark story, something powerful and dangerous. Suddenly, a scraping noise came from the corner, drawing their gaze. The fireplace crackled, although no fire burned inside. The ashes swirled, and from within the darkened depths, a voice emerged, a soft, alluring whisper. Help me. Jake took a step back, the color draining from his face. Who is it? His eyes darted as he backed toward the door. Mom, I don't like it here. Mia whimpered, her grip tightening around Sarah's fingers. Stay calm. We're going to find a way out. Sarah's voice trembled as she raised her chin, forcing herself to be brave. Collecting her thoughts, she felt a gust of air whip through the room, swirling the papers into a frenzy. The whispers intensified, echoing around them like a chorus of lost souls. The papers settled as if the wind had lost interest, revealing a drawing that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. A crude sketch depicted a shadowy figure standing atop a hill, beneath which lay inscriptions in an ancient tongue. The words felt familiar, as if echoing the chants they'd heard outside. A ritual? Jake muttered, stepping closer to examine the drawing. But before he could process it, a loud banging erupted from above, rattling the wooden beams. Mia shrieked, eyes wide with terror. Mom! What was that? Shh! Listen, Sarah whispered, holding her breath to focus. The thumping grew louder, almost in rhythm with their hearts. It was like something was moving, trying to break free. Maybe it's a way out, Jake suggested, fear lighting his features as he pointed toward a narrow staircase shadowed in darkness. But before anyone could respond, the front door creaked open slowly, revealing a figure shrouded in darkness. Long, twisted limbs draped down, and a face hidden beneath a tattered hood loomed, obscured by shadows. A deep, raspy voice slithered forward. You shouldn't have come here. Sarah instinctively stepped in front of Mia, fear now boiling into rage. Who are you? What do you want with us? She shouted, her voice fierce though it shook. But you're already bound, the figure replied, its voice an unsettling blend of pity and malice. You are part of the town now, a debt must be paid. A sense of the uncanny clutched at Sarah's throat, choking her. She turned to Jake, who looked as if he was about to collapse. Mia clung to her side, trembling. Run, Sarah commanded, the raw instinct for survival pushing the panic aside. But the words felt hollow, echoing against the weight of the impending doom. The shadows stepped closer, whispers enveloping them again, growing louder, blending with a low hum that vibrated within their bones. You cannot escape. The town has welcomed you. With desperate determination, Sarah motioned for Mia and Jake to follow her. They rushed toward the back door, the air thickening as they sprinted through the kitchen. Behind them, laughter erupted disembodied, echoing, taunting them into despair. Just as they reached the door, it slammed shut with a resonating thud, sealing them inside the nightmares that hung around every corner. There was no turning back now. But then a chilling thought crept in. What was the price of their escape from this accursed place? As Sarah reached for the handle, fear coursed through her veins. Could they even leave at all? With a roar of laughter behind them, Sarah's fingers fumbled on the cold, rusted door handle. It felt like ice, and in that moment she couldn't tell if it was the metal or her own fear that chilled her. Come on! She hissed, yanking at the door again, but it was like pulling against a wall of stone, unyielding, mocking. Jake turned, eyes wide with panic. What do we do now? The sound of footsteps echoed from the staircase, heavy and deliberate, drowning out the laughter. Each step resonated through the cottage, a marching drum beating down their spirits. Sarah couldn't think straight. Dread wedged itself between her thoughts like a stubborn splinter. Mia, stay back, she said, pushing her daughter behind her. She felt something shift inside her, a deep reservoir of fear, bubbling over into something more primal. She was ready to fight if she had to, but before they could dwell on the next move, the figure from the doorway stepped forward. Closer now, the shadow revealed more, a gnarled hand reaching toward them, fingers elongated and twisted like the broken branches of a dead tree. You're bound to the town, it rasped, each word slithering into the air. You can't escape your fate. You're insane! Jake shouted back, anger lighting a flicker of hope in Sarah's chest. We want to do your bidding. The figure drew in closer, and Sarah caught a glimpse of wisps beneath the hood, faces twisted in anguish, eyes pleading. Desperation washed over her, a terrifying revelation dawning. This was beyond a simple threat. They were entangled in something ancient and sinister, something that demanded a price she was not willing to pay. With a jolt, Sarah turned and barreled toward the staircase, taking 3 steps at a time. She heard Jake's footsteps hesitate behind her. What are you doing? He cried, fear lacing each syllable. Finding a way out. She screamed back, heart racing, adrenaline kicking in as she gripped Mia's hand tighter. They hurled themselves up the stairs, the shadows upstairs pulsating in mad rhythm. The air thickened with musty odors, and an unnatural chill pressed against their skin. At the top, the hall stretched out like a looming specter, doors lining the corridor, each one cloaked in darkness. Which way? Mia's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. The laughter swelled again, a sinister echo reverberating from the far end of the hall, mingling with soft cries and whimpers of souls long lost. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. Stay close, she whispered, edging toward the door at the end. But with every step, something felt wrong. The atmosphere constricted around them, as if the house itself was alive, breathing, watching. Shadows danced along the walls, and when Sarah turned to check behind her, she found the figure from earlier stepping into the hallway, its twisted form stretching longer and taking shape. Why do you fight? It crooned, voice dripping with mockery. The town feeds on your fear. All at once, it lunged forward, just as they reached the door. Heart pounding, she threw the door open, and cold air rushed in, the taste of freedom almost tangible. They stumbled inside, but the room was unlike anything they'd encountered so far. It was circular, an altar in the middle, littered with strange objects, skulls, bones, and faded photographs of lost faces. What is this place? Jake's voice cracked as he stepped into the center. Before Sarah could answer, the doors slammed shut behind them, sealing them inside, and a low hum began to fill the space. The air thickened with an otherworldly energy, buzzing painfully in her ears. You cannot escape what is meant to bind you. Mom! Mia cried, terror mixing with confusion in her voice. And just when Sarah thought it couldn't get worse, the walls began to shimmer, revealing images of past inhabitants' desperate eyes, pleading hands reaching out from the depths. As the heaviness grew, Sarah knew they had unearthed something far worse than she ever imagined. They weren't just trapped in a cottage. They were in a nightmare woven deep into the fabric of this cursed town. Look! Mia gasped. Pointing to the altar. In that moment of horror, Sarah understood the altar was not just a place of fear. It was calling to them, demanding their sacrifice. What would they give to be freed from the chains of this malevolence? They had to decide. How far would they go to escape? As shadows closed in on them, a chilling question remained. Would they become part of the town's dark tapestry, just like those before them? Or could they break the spell and fight for their freedom? Time was running out. The hum grew louder, vibrating through their bones, drowning out Sarah's frantic thoughts. Panic surged as she pressed against the walls, searching for a way out, anything. The altar pulsated under a dim light, casting eerie shadows that leapt and twisted like trapped souls. Why wouldn't it open? Jake shouted, banging on the door, desperation pushing his voice higher. The door remained unyielding, a solid slab of apparent safety turning hostile. Each impact echoed in the room, but the mocking laughter outside only grew fainter, promising the possibility of escape slipping away. Mia's small hand gripped Sarah's tighter, the warmth of her daughter fighting against the cold that seeped into every cranny of the chamber. Mom, I want to go home, Mia whimpered, tears brimming in her frightened eyes. The shadows around them felt alive, crawling, pressing closer as if responding to her cries. Listen, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. We can't give in to the fear. We have to find a way to fight it. As they huddled together, the altar began to shift. Each object upon it glinted with an otherworldly sheen, capturing their attention. The photographs seemed to ripple, faces warping as if trying to break free from the confines of their frames, their hollow eyes boring into Sarah's soul. A grotesque realization struck her. Those faces were familiar, sharing the same desperate expressions. What if she breathed, eyes darting between the altar and Mia? What if the sacrifice is our fears? What if we have to confront what haunts us to be released? Don't say that, Mom! Jake blurted, backing away as if the words would manifest in the air. But as they hesitated, the shadows flickered, and out of the dark, whispers crawled into their minds, echoing their worst nightmares. Each word felt like a dagger, sharp and cutting. Images of loss, entrapment, betrayal, all pressed against their hearts. Mom, I'm scared. Mia cried again, her voice laced with swirling terror. I know, honey, I know, Sarah said, keeping her eyes locked on her daughter. But whatever it is, we can face it together. You have to trust me. The air thickened again, the low hum transforming into a panicked chorus of pleads. Join us, a million voices trembled, merging into a single, sinister plea. Become one with the town. I will not! Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the clamoring souls encroaching upon them. The room shook in response, the altar glowing brighter. She could feel the rage inside her swelling, and she stepped forward, heart pounding. We are not afraid. You will not take us. Light burst from the altar, engulfing them. Mia clutched her mother's hand tighter, their silhouettes flickering in the radiant glow. For a fleeting moment, the promises of the town, the shadows, all seemed to falter. Sarah could see glimpses of freedom through the glowing light, but it faded away like mist. Suddenly, the light centered on the altar, revealing a dark, swirling vortex in its heart. A low growl tremored beneath it, shaking the floor beneath their feet. Embrace us, a voice whispered, seductive and sickly sweet. Run! Sarah screamed, yanking Mia toward the edge of the altar. She could feel the pull of the vortex, the town's malicious grip trying to grasp them. They jolted back, hearts racing, scrambling toward the shimmering light at the edge of the altar. But as they reached the threshold, it flickered violently, and they felt a powerful force trying to drag them back. Mom, I can't hold on! Mia cried, her small body tugged by the growing darkness at their feet. Don't let go! Sarah shrieked, feeling her daughter slip from her grasp. Just then, in the midst of the chaos, Sarah noticed a familiar photograph teetering on the altar, its image momentarily absorbing the glow. The face belonged to someone she thought she had lost forever. Wait! Her voice pierced through the din. What if the connection is through them? What if we can draw from their strength? This thought spiraled into a desperate hope, igniting a flicker of courage. Would they have the strength to confront the deeper fears hidden within those faces? All at once, darkness swirled around them, the energy pulling tighter and tighter, collapsing down on them. Time is up! The simultaneous whispers of lost souls clouded the air, and Sarah lunged for the photo. But the question remained, would it save them or doom them further? The room folded around them, shadows tightening their grip. Would they unlock the power to escape, or would they remain caught in the town's cruel embrace? Breathless, they surged forward into the unknown, trembling as they reached for the one sliver of hope that might just break the curse of the town. As Sarah lunged for the photograph, a wave of consciousness flooded her mind. It was like stepping into a river of memories, swirling and chaotic, each face trapped within echoing the pain, fear, and regrets that had weighed heavily upon them. Her own voice throbbed with the pulsing energy of the room, urging her forth. Take my hand! She cried, clasping Mia's small fingers tightly. Jake grasped her other hand, his heart racing, but in his eyes flickered a sliver of defiance. Fear was no longer an option, escape was the goal. With a breath of determination, Sarah focused on the photograph of the familiar face, the person she had lost long ago in the shadows of Willow Creek. I can feel you! I'm bringing you home! She shouted, feeling strength course through her veins. Around them, the shadows recoiled, as the light from the altar surged brighter, illuminating the room. Join us! The voices of the lost shouted, their mournful tones clawing at her heart. Yet in that moment, something shifted in Sarah's spirit. Instead of fear, she inhaled courage. If she was to break the town's curse, she would have to confront their darkest secrets, and invoke the strength hidden within that photograph. Gripping it fiercely, Sarah whispered, "We release you." Her own voice shook, but the warmth of love blazed within her as she concentrated on the photograph. A breathless moment hung suspended in the air, a fragile thread tethering the living and the lost. "Help us find our way home." Jake followed up, his voice steady. "You're not alone," Mia echoed, her innocence sparking hope in the dark. The shadows shuddered, wavering as the light from the altar exploded into a radiant blaze, pushing against the dark waves crushing them. With every ounce of will, Sarah let go of her fear, sharing her memories and courage with the faces trapped within. They pooled together, emerging as a shimmering aura enveloping the room, mingling with the darkness, and then silence fell. The oppressive cacophony faded, replaced by a resounding echo of freedom. Sarah felt herself physically lifted, the ground no longer heavy beneath her feet. With one hand clasped around the photograph, she willed the energy outward, ripping a hole through the nightmarish boundary of the town. They would not succumb. They would break the cycle. As the darkness receded, the space around them transformed. The altar dissolved into bright colors, swirling, becoming a vortex that glimmered with the essence of life. "Stronger together," she bellowed, pulling her kids to her side. This was their moment, their chance to reclaim not just their lives but the lives of the souls imprisoned by fear. "Now!" Jake shouted as the vibrant energies enveloped them. With a defiant push, they leaped into the glowing light. Sarah's heart soared, daring to seize the unknown, a surge of joy washing over her as they broke free from the town's grip. Together, they soared through the vast expanse of shimmering light, leaving behind the shadows that had plagued them for so long. And as the light dimmed around them, the trees came into view, the familiar curves of Willow Creek striking against the dawn sky. The air tasted sweet, crisp with the promise of a new beginning. They landed gently on the warm grass, the sun rising like a phoenix behind them, as a chorus of whispers faded to silence. "Mom?" Mia stared up at her, wide-eyed, hope flickering on her small face. "Are we home?" Jake added, breathless. "Yes," Sarah breathed, her chest rising and falling with relief. "We're finally home." Relief washed over them, the burdens shattering like glass, leaving only the echoes of their strength. "We faced the darkness together," Sarah said, pulling her children close. As they stood bathed in the morning light, the burdens of Willow Creek faded into memory. The town was not erased, it had merely reverted back into what it was, a quaint, untroubled place washed clean of the shadows that once cloaked it. And as they walked toward their house, the air felt lighter, laughter bubbling up where terror had once thrived. In that tranquil moment they knew they could start anew. They would carry the memories of their fight, but also hope that echoed louder than the whispers of the past. They had resisted, conquered their fears, and emerged victorious. As Sarah turned to her children, she smiled. "Let us never forget this." No matter what, the sun shone brightly as they stepped fully into the warmth of their home, ready for laughter, joy, and the promise of brighter tomorrows. The shadows of the town faded behind them, leaving behind only light, hopeful, unstoppable life. But wait! Hold on a second! You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more exclusive stories that will keep your heart racing. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, it really helps me keep this going. And don't keep this to yourself. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this wild ending, and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and join the thrill of the ride. Let us keep this momentum going, folks. You're all a part of this journey, so show your support now. Thank you.